As you can see, I have a male mannequin here next to me, and I'm going to be doing two special techniques for you guys, just so you have an understanding of the basics of what goes into a good short men's haircut. When you talk about short men's haircuts, we think of barbers, but that is not necessarily true. We could do it as a hairdressers as well, cosmetologists. It's just a matter of cutting short hair. But there are two key techniques that are very important, and you must be successful at these two techniques I'm going to demonstrate for you today to be able to cut men's hair cutting short. This is before you actually go so short where you're actually just using clippers with attachments. We're going to be doing the techniques today are called scissor over comb, and the other technique is clipper over comb. So whether you are working with scissors or with clippers, the techniques are short. And we want to make sure that you have a good understanding of what goes behind these techniques to create short haircuts. So the first one I'm going to demonstrate for you is going to be scissor over comb. Now the tools that you use for this technique is the scissor and of course the comb, hence scissor over comb. That makes sense. What we're going to do is we're going to be creating a short perimeter for you around this side, and I'm going to be doing half a side with the scissor over comb, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to the other side and I'm going to show you how to work with clipper over comb. Now, scissors change because you have to realize that there are many different size scissors, and in this example you could see that this scissor here is a larger length scissor than this one here. So when I work with scissor over comb, I like to work with the larger shears. It's sort of like when my uncle used to say, you wouldn't paint a house with a toothbrush. Well, he's absolutely right. So when you're doing a scissor over comb, you can actually attack larger areas with a larger scissor and get more hair to come off more quickly than you would with a smaller shear. So again, making quicker work of the scissor over comb, and of course time is money in our business, so the faster we are, the more successful or the more clients we could fit in on a daily basis. Whether you're doing men's or women's hair, the speed time is money. That's just the bottom line. When you talk about the scissors, I like to use a larger scissor. Now let's talk combs. When you talk about combs, there are many different size combs. I have a couple behind me which are designed for larger or smaller areas. This particular comb is very, very flat, designed for clipper over comb, but you could use it for scissor over comb as well. You also have a wider base comb, and back when we used to do women's haircuts in the early 80s with scissor over comb, we would use a wider comb so we would stay farther away from the scalp because we didn't want to show a female scalp that was too masculine. So we used to use a fatter comb this way to work with the scissor over comb on the women's haircuts. So that's the variations that you have in scissor over comb, but there are three very important rules that I'm going to go over, but I'm going to get started on this mannequin at this time so that you guys, we can move forward with this haircut. The idea of scissor over comb is there's three very, very important rules that you must understand and you must abide by when you are doing scissor over comb. It is very important to understand that if you're working on a client with straight hair, that you must use the comb to lift the hair away from the scalp to be able to get it to cut off. You want to elevate the hair, and the comb is what does that for you. When you talk about scissor over comb, you want to make sure that you are going to work against the way that person's hair grows. So, unlike this mannequin where we just have straight down or straight out type of growth patterns, if we were to have a man whose nape area was growing to the left of his nape, we would have to work our comb to the right to stand the hair up. Now, when you talk about straight hair, that is a very important rule. It's called always work against the growth pattern. Now, we also have clients with curly hair. When you talk about curly hair, everything from curly to afro hair, when you talk about naturally curly hair, we don't have to worry about working with a comb when we're doing this. You want to make sure that you are going to work the hair straight up into the curl. 9 out of 10 times when you're working on curly hair, you're more than likely going to work with the clipper over comb technique, or you're going to work with clippers with attachments when you're doing curly hair. And I'll explain a little bit more about the curly hair when I'm working with the clipper. It's called with the grain or against the grain, because curly hair still has a growth pattern just like straight hair, but it depends on how short you want to go. When you're working with a curly haired client, you want to still find the growth patterns, and if you go with the way the hair grows with the machine, it will be called with the grain, and that will leave the hair longer. But if you are using or going with curly hair and you go against the way the hair grows or against the grain, hence the name, we would then cut the hair. The machine would actually cut the hair shorter. So like I said, I'll go into that a little bit more detail afterwards when we go into the machine and showing you the clipper over comb technique. So the basics are this. 1, always work with rule number 1. Always work against the growth pattern. Rule number 2, always work with the teeth of the comb away from the head. Never work with the teeth of the comb going into the head or straight up and down. We want to work with the hair, with the comb working away from the head. The last rule, rule number 3, is to always make sure you never pick up hair and stop and cut, because that's going to leave a line in your work and you're going to wind up not being able to successfully do scissor over comb. So we are always cutting in motion when we're cutting scissor over comb, and we are always keeping the teeth of the comb coming away from the head. And number 3, we're always working against the growth pattern in this particular technique. When you talk about this scissor over comb, it is an art. You must practice it. You must get good at it. That's the bottom line if you're going to be successful at it. There's no way of teaching you anything other but those 3 rules, and then continuously practicing. So on that note, I'm going to start the actual technique for you guys, and we'll go into our scissor over comb technique. In the beginning here, I'm going to start by taking the hair off very, very gently, and you'll see me actually working the haircut upward, again because the growth pattern here is downward, so we're just working up the head like this. And you see that the scissors follow the comb. The comb is what dictates the length of hair. How far out I come with the comb will determine the length of the hair. I also will work in panels. So when I talk about panels, I'll start in one area, come up, and I'll see my guideline, if you will, okay, just like if I was working with the hair between my fingers, I see guidelines. I'm going to continuously eyeball how short I want this particular panel. So I'm bringing this in, and you can see it's getting shorter and shorter. And you could see the comb is working outward, and we're just working the hairline. We're not going up too high with this. We're just doing the perimeter of this haircut, and I will continue to work out. Now, you've heard me in the past talk about the 3 different ways of cutting hair. Solid form, one length, graduation, which is shorter at the bottom to longer at the top, and then of course the layering technique, which is shorter at the top and longer towards the bottom, or even in length all the way around. The bottom line here is, when you talk about scissor over comb or clipper over comb, that falls under the category of graduation. It's just a shorter version of graduation. But graduation only occurs in the exterior of the haircut. So the idea of doing this scissor over comb and keeping the teeth, the comb coming out and away from the head, the hair is shorter at the bottom and goes to longer at the top. So the idea of scissor over comb or clipper over comb, any type of fade haircut, depending on what you're wearing, the men usually wear their hair shorter around the perimeter, going longer towards the top of their head. That's called graduation. So that's where this falls under. Now, what I'm going to show you is I'm going to be bringing this side area up, and as I do this, I want you to take special note of the short hair over here, and that's my guide for the hair that's going to be coming off over here. So when I mentioned about panels, here's where I'm looking. I'm looking right here, and I'm working with my comb coming up, and that hair is coming off as I work to keep that hair even with what I've already done. Because if I make this area too short or shorter than what we did prior to, then I'm going to have to go back and I'm going to have to cut more hair off of what I've already done. So as I work around this mannequin, what I'm doing is I'm taking an eye right here on this guideline to see where I'm cutting the hair and the length I want for that haircut. and just doing some cleanup. So I could spend hours here just working on this technique. But the technique of the scissor over comb, if you don't have a good scissor stroke, okay, and I'm going to show you this right here. If you can't open and close your scissors 90 degrees, and you can't hold this bottom blade totally steady with your scissor stroke, you're never going to do good scissor over comb. A proper scissor stroke is necessary prior to being successful at scissor over comb. And to be able to open and close your scissors 90 degrees, that is with just the thumb moving and the top of the hand being totally steady. Good luck trying to be good at scissor over comb. So that's a preliminary thing, a good scissor stroke. And we're going to continue working through the side here on this mannequin for you. And we're going to take this side area all nice and short around the side perimeter of this haircut. So I'm going to come up from underneath, and I'm going to take it right from that corner where I stopped, and we're going to bring it up and out and continue this scissor over comb technique. And just keep snipping, following that comb. A lot of times what I see a lot of people try to do when they're trying to do scissor over comb is they'll do 1, 2, 3, and they're trying to work across the comb. That doesn't work. Cannot do that in good scissor over comb. You must come with the comb just straight up and out with the teeth up and away, and the scissor just keeps opening and closing as we work. What I'm going to do is I'm going to now just go and clean up around the edge of this haircut, keeping that front out of the way, and we're going to just create a sideburn just in one length fashion right here. I'm going to go clean up around the ear, so I'm going to make sure I stay around the perimeter of this haircut. Okay, if I had a person, I would fold that ear down to go behind the person's ear. And I'm just going to clean this up right around that ear. Just using the tips of my scissors. Okay, so now I'm able to actually see a little bit better. I'm going to go in, I'm going to be taking this scissor over comb closer. Around the perimeter of this haircut. So I'm adjusting what I did back here. You could see that this is a certain length, and now what I'm doing is I'm coming in shorter through the side area. Once I tie this or get to the length I want on the sides, I will then blend that into the haircut length that I had in the back so that I can move on to the other side. And we're going to get it in tighter and tighter, and that's done by the comb, following the comb. Again, making sure that your scissors, you're only using this much of the scissor and the comb. You're not going across the comb, and you're not trying to get one big slice across everything. We're working in panels. When you're working with scissor over comb, think of panels. And we're working straight up the head because of the growth pattern on this particular mannequin. If it was a person and their hair grew back, I'd be working forward. If the hair grew forward, I'd be working back. That's the idea of the first rule. We could do an entire haircut scissor over comb. We could do crew cuts with scissor over comb. The bottom line here is, though, we have to understand that if we do this scissor over comb in this fashion, where we're taking the scissor and we're working with the comb with the teeth coming away from the head, that we're creating the graduation. But part of the rules for graduation are graduation can only occur in the exterior of the head. Well, where's the interior of the head and where's the exterior of the head? Well, every person's different. So if I put a comb against a man's head or a woman's head, and wherever that comb leaves that head form, the bone structure, this is considered below there where it's touching the head, the exterior. And then anything above the comb, which doesn't touch the head, that's the interior. So everybody's head shape and bone structure is different. So when you talk about interior and exterior, graduation can only occur in the exterior of someone's head. What if the person wants a crew cut? Well, I do the graduation through this area here, and then once I get to the widest part of the head, I can then take the scissor over comb and go completely on the top of the head and do layers. But once it goes to the interior, it's considered layered hair cutting. Now, I don't know about you, but it would be a very, very expensive haircut if I were to do a haircut, a crew cut with scissor over comb, because it doesn't make any sense to do that. What we would do is we could do the scissor over comb around the perimeter and then take our machine with our attachment to do the, depending on the length on top, doing the clipper with a crew cut. But there is a technique which I'll show you in just a little bit on how you could use scissor over comb through the top to shorten the length on top. That is considered layering. So scissor over comb can be used when you use the 3 rules to do graduation. You always have to work with the teeth of the comb working away from the head, so you're actually going from shorter to longer. But I might have misspoken earlier where I might have said that you could only do scissor over comb in graduated form. And I don't know if I said that or not, but I definitely know that we can do scissor over comb and we can create graduation and or layers. So what I'm doing now is I'm just cleaning up my side, and as I said, I'm going to take this to the level I want. And I'm going to leave that fringe area longer so I can do something with that a little later on. So now what I'm going to do is, you could see this big old corner through the side area here, and I don't want to keep that, but I do want to blend it into my length in the back. Okay? So what I'll do now is I'll come from this corner here, and I'm going to take this shorter because I do feel that this perimeter is a little bit shorter than what I have here, and I'm going to work my way up this panel. And slowly work that hair to blend with that side. Now, because I want the hair shorter into longer, what you'll see me working with is the comb, and you could see how my hand is pulling that comb away, so I'm going to even keep the corner and blend it. I'm not going to be going flat with the comb this way. I'm going to be working with the bottom of the comb closer to match that, and the comb here being farther away from the head so I can blend the short into long. Remember, we want to change the length of our scissor over comb here. So what I'm doing right now is I'm creating along this perimeter the same length that I have along this perimeter. And what I'm going to do then is, once I have that, blend it in another panel into the back. So we're just working this until I'm satisfied. And as we spoke earlier, you see that when I'm going up my panels, I'm looking here for my guideline, taking this hair off over on this side. So that's pretty much how I blended into the back. Now I'm going to just clean up the back a little bit right here, because I mentioned to you earlier that I'm going to be doing clipper over comb on this side. And what I'm going to do is I just want to make sure that I'm happy with this side before I go into my clipper over comb on the other side. Again, looking at my guideline here and taking it off slowly and steadily, not just taking chunks. Biggest mistake is when you get actual lines in your haircut and you wind up with having to go in and take that hair shorter and shorter and shorter. We want to just have a nice even blend from top to bottom. And don't chop at the hair. Don't chop, not chop. It's a flowing motion. It's up and steady, chop, chop, chop. Scissors just open and close following that comb. Comb dictates where that hair comes out to. So think of your comb as your fingers holding the hair out at a projection angle. And when you talk about the scissors, all they're doing is they're there to cut the hair off. Okay, so what I'm going to do for you guys is I'm going to now, since we've got our perimeter done in our haircut, I'm going to show you how we can cut with these techniques in the interior of the haircut. But remember, because we're above the widest part of the head now, we're actually creating layers, which is different than graduation. If I were to try and continue coming out like this, it would be impossible because the head is curving in and I'm trying to come out. We're always going to have this weight line, which is what we created. And graduation is that. It builds up weight in a haircut. And you could see that weight line, but obviously a lot of people don't wear, or especially men, are not going to wear a wedge type effect in the back here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how you cut scissor over comb and clipper over comb in the interior of the haircut, which is layering. When you talk about this, I didn't mention this earlier, but if you notice, I've done this whole haircut totally dry. And that's why most barbershops very rarely do shampoo, or if they do it after a men's haircut. In fact, in our school, what we do is when we do a short men's haircut with a machine or with the scissor over comb, we actually shampoo our gentlemen after they're done with their haircut, just to get all these tiny little bits that you've seen all over the place here out of their scalp area and stuff. So when we do men's haircutting and we're doing these two techniques, it's done on damp dry to dry hair, always, so that you can let the hair move. Here we go with the scissor over comb. The difference between layers and graduation. The difference between layers and graduation is that I'm no longer going to worry about keeping the teeth of the comb away from the head. We're going to go straight up with this haircut, and we're going to take that weight away through that middle area here. And that is the only difference. We're going to still keep it against growth pattern. We're going to never stop in our work, and we're going to go straight up with the teeth of that comb. So we're going to blend in the bottom area to the top area. I will do the same thing. I'll do the side first, this one side, with the scissor over comb technique. So we'll keep it the same. This is the side I did the scissor over comb. And I'm going to just keep working this side of the layered haircut up into this men's haircut. So we'll do this side and continue working the layers. And again, you see me working it in a corner type fashion. And I'll do that through this corner area here. Taking that corner off a little bit and just releasing that weight through this haircut. Tying in the fringe area. And making sure I'm satisfied. Now, you don't see me going around, meaning going in yet, because again, I do believe in a men's haircut being done in a square fashion. So what I'm going to do now is, so I can keep the squareness of the top and the sides, since I've completed this area going straight up, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the hair and force it forward, and I'm going to actually do scissor over comb through the top area and the side area of this area on this side of the haircut. So what we're doing is, by coming straight up with our comb, we create a plane this way. And then when I come and I force that hair up this way and continue a plane on the top of the head, we then created that square we're trying to achieve in a men's haircut. Again, if the man doesn't want the corner, cut it off. Now you got a round haircut. But a great freaking hairdresser knows how to do square haircuts, especially on men. So I'm going to bring him to the front here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this comb and I'm going to actually be bringing this hair up, straight up, and start to cut my scissor over comb through the top area of this haircut. And I'm only doing the one side, which makes it a little more difficult for me. But we're going to try and do this so you guys can see it out there. Picking that hair up, taking that hair off, working that hair into the middle of this haircut, and bringing that hair to a shorter length. You could see barbering techniques going on right now. And again, taking the front, leaving the front long, bringing it back, and again, taking my scissor and just taking that hair off. So this is the scissor over comb technique that is done in a layered fashion. I do my son's haircut like this on the top, and I work that haircut to the length I want. Okay, everybody, so this is the end of our session today. I just wanted to put a little bit of product in my hand, and I wanted to just create a little bit of a texture for the guy in his haircut and stuff like that. Just spike it out a little bit, make it a little messy, a little tousled, so that he can wear it any way he wants. But this is the final version of the haircut I wanted to do for you today. I hope you took something away from it to actually utilize in your skill sets and in your ways of cutting hair. So the idea of doing this for you guys, I appreciate you watching, and I hope to see you again in future videos.